So, um, so what is the SAT made up of? It's made up of English and math, and of course, the English part has reading and writing. Now, for some people, they say the writing, they refer to the writing as grammar. Um, I don't like to refer to it as grammar, even though it is made up of grammar. A lot of it is made up of grammatical rules, but there is more to it than just grammar. There are topics such as diction, which is choice words. There are topics relating to attitude, tone. These are all what they're not really grammar. They are other aspects of writing that you need to know. Now, a very important question that many students will ask is, okay, do I have to write? No, you don't have to write, right? So then why do we call it writing? We call it writing because the tools and the skills and the knowledge that you use to write, that is what will be used, or that is what you will be tested on. Okay. Um, just before I go on, I want to ask you guys, can you hear me clearly or not?
Now, yes.
Some students are saying that they can't hear me clearly. Guys, whoever's having problem, maybe it's on your end. Maybe the speaker on your end. Uh, you need to raise the volume, or you need to get some headphones, because I think I don't have an issue on my side. If the rest of you can hear me and only a few of you cannot, then those few of you, it might be on your end, right? So check your volume, the volume of your speaker, check that you're using, your headphones are working correctly if you're using one, okay? Okay, let's carry on. So you don't need to write, but you will be tested in the skills that writers usually use to come up with some pieces of writing, right? Your ability to summarize, your ability to proofread, your ability to recognize the punctuation, for example, all these things that we were going to look at one by one. Now, I don't want you to, like I said, we don't want to start usually um, on high gear. We want to start slow so that you don't, you're not shocked, or you don't take in a lot at a time. It's better to learn a little and understand it well and be able to apply it 100% than to read 20, 30 pages, but you're not able to apply not even one of it. And I'm sure all of you can agree about this, right? So remember, your second goal, what was the first thing I told you? The first thing is practice. The second thing I want to tell you is consistency. This is the second advice. And this is something I tell all my students, right? Practice and consistency. Consistency means continue little by little by little every day, but don't stop. Even if it's a little every day, don't stop. That's how you will be able to ace the SAT. Okay, so now that we've seen the components of the SAT, which is English, reading, writing, math, now next question is, how long is the SAT? Now, of course, before, you guys are somewhat luckier this time, because maybe Abdul Majid might know that the previous SAT, did you take the previous one or you took the digital SAT?
I took the previous one
The
two
previous
times.
one.
Yes.
Exactly. So it was much longer than
Yes.
what what the new SAT is. So if you don't know, guys, they've changed the format of the SAT. Before, it used to be almost 3 hours plus. Now they've brought it down to only 2 hours 15 minutes. So that's a very big advantage for most of you. Why is that a big advantage? Because you don't have the pressure of keeping up for a long period of time. Whoever did the exam before, trust me, they will tell you this, that after the second hour, your energy really drops. Even if you know the answer to the questions, but because you're constantly working and you're trying to finish a lot within a time limit, so you also have to have a lot of endurance and a lot of energy. But the good thing now that it's only 2 hours 15 minutes, so you can take advantage of the short time. It doesn't mean that the SAT is going to be easier. It just means that the one more thing where you had to really keep your focus and keep your energy up for long periods of time is now shortened to only 2 hours 15 minutes. Okay, so the reading, you have 2 modules for reading and writing. Is divided into basically 2 parts. That is 32 minutes, 32 minutes. And then you will have a break of 10 minutes. And then after that, you will do the math, also, which are also 2 modules, 35 minutes, 35 minutes. Okay? Now, coming to the next thing that you should know about the SAT, just give me a second. Again, I'm not going to talk about your math because I am not teaching you math. I am teaching you English. So I will focus on the English. For math, your math teacher would know better than me, of course. All right. So now, what are the English question types that you get in the SAT? Now, I know this is a long table and okay, there are a few things here, but I will just quickly go over it. So they will test you in craft and structure. They will test you in information and ideas. They will test you in standard English conventions, and they will test you in expression of ideas. Now, just okay, I will not explain it in so much detail, and you don't have to worry about it too much for now. But what you should know is that there are different skills that you will be tested on. So each skill will have, there will be a certain number of questions from that skill. So it's divided into these 4 areas, and each of these 4 areas are made up of 28%, 26%, 26%, and 20% respectively. So the point I'm trying to make here is that you have to actually be good in all areas. Why? Because you cannot say, oh, I'm really good at, for example, expression of ideas, but I'm not good at standard English conventions. Then you're going to lose a big portion because the division is equal. You understand? Of course, some students are going to be stronger in some areas than others, but the most important thing is for you, and this will come with time, you will know where are your strong points and where are your weak points. And that's why I'm there. I'm there to help you and to guide you and to help you recognize what your strong points are so that you can work on them, and what your weak points are so that you can fix them. Okay? Up until this point, do you have any questions, guys? Anyone has a question? If we have a question, please, you can stop and raise your hand and stop me halfway. Raise your hand and then I don't mind answering questions in the middle. But let me know. I want you guys to also participate. Don't let me only do the talking. I want to hear from you guys as well. So do you have any questions? Ru'a, Ali, Rania, Hajar.
Do we have examples of these categories?
Yes, of course, we do have examples. We will look at 2 sample questions now. All right. Of course, we won't go over, like I told you, this is just an orientation. So I wanted to give you a basic overview. We will have another session on Wednesday where we will get into slightly more detail. But for this session, which is just a brief overview, I'll give you 2 sample questions and we will solve it together, and you will see how we solve it together. But it won't be from all these categories. It will only be in one of the categories. Okay.
Great.
All right. Thank you very much, Ru'a. Any other question from anyone else? From Zoom user. Who is Zoom user? By the way, guys, please put your names the way that you want to be called. All right, because I don't see you, so at least I should be able to call you. And if you put your name as Zoom user, I won't know who you are. Yes, Haya, I think you're raising your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah. How many students in class?
How many students in class? As of now, we are 21 in total.
No, not now.
Then
And the SAT exam.
in
No,
the SAT, it
sorry.
can differ. It
In
can, yeah, it can be. It depends on the center. It depends on the center. It depends on your area. It depends on the season. So you cannot. There's no one number for the exam. It can. It depends on the
not
size of the
the
centers.
exam, in the course. In the course, sorry. In the
You mean
course.
this
Our
course?
course. Yeah.
In this course, as of now, since it's the first week, so the number is still not clear. We will know at the end of the week how many people,
Okay.
how many of
Thank
your
you.
classmates are there. No problem. You're welcome. All right. Anyone else? Nika, Majid, Majid, are you there? Abdurrahman, Majidoob. Okay, let's continue. So, what is the score, or how are the scores divided? Okay, for the full test, you have 1,600 in total. Okay, 1,600 is the total score that you will be scored against, that you will get points against. Now, a lot of course students ask, what is a good grade? A really good grade is 1,400 and above. Okay, and the average grade is, you could say, it can range between 1,100 to 1,400. But depending on what you want to enter into in university, there are different requirements. Most universities will take between 1,200 up to even 1,400 plus, or 1,500. Okay, so that's what you should aim for. You should aim for nothing less than what? Less than 1,300. Let's take the middle point. Okay. All right. So now, what is the question solving process for SAT? Now, of course, there is a detailed way. There is a long answer to this. And the long answer to this, we will explore in the class. We will go through it in the class together. We will look at things like, process of elimination. We will look at playing positive and negative. All these are terms that we use, or these are ways that we use to solve questions. But now the general idea of solving a question, there are 3 steps: recognize, think, and solve. And a lot of people, a lot of students, what do? They ignore this part when this is the first step. If you cannot recognize the question, it becomes very difficult to solve it. A lot of students, they start from the second process. They look at a question and immediately they start thinking about what the answer can be. Is it A? Is it B? Is it C? Is it D? The first steps makes it much easier for you. Now, what does recognize mean? Recognize means your ability to know some specific kind of question, maybe question A from question B from question C. So we talked about, or in the previous slide, I showed you guys that there are these different categories of questions, right? So different skills that you will be tested on. And there are different ways, different approaches that you will use to solve different categories of questions. So if you're able to recognize these categories, it becomes very easy to do what? To solve them. And let me just give you a very general kind of example. Let's say you were walking on the road, for example, and you see a cat that passes by your path. And then you walk slightly further and you see a dog, a huge dog with sharp teeth and You can see him walking towards you. In which case would you be more likely to change the path or the direction that you're walking in? When you see the dog or when you see the cat?
The dog.
The dog. Unless there's some people who like dogs, so they're not afraid of dogs, right? But generally speaking, you'd be most likely to change your direction when you see the dog. And this comes from your ability to recognize that a dog is different than a cat. And so your response is going to be different. So the same way when you see a certain question on the SAT, there are different kinds of questions. There are literal comprehension questions, there are inference type questions, there are punctuation type questions, there are different kinds of questions. And you don't deal with them, you don't respond to them, you don't treat them all in the same way. So if you're able to recognize what type of question we are dealing with, then you are able to know which approach to use immediately. Okay, so I can't stress this enough. Recognize, recognize, recognize. And we will see it as we go through the course. We will see how we apply it. Okay, now let's do a question. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this question here, and I'm going to give you all 3 minutes to solve it. Okay, you have 3 minutes. In fact, as much as 3 minutes. If you can solve it in even 1 minute, that's perfect. Solve it, and then I'll ask you the answer to this. Write for me the answer in the chat, in a private message, okay? You can start now. Okay, so I have quite I'm happy that some of you have answered it already. So Faris answered, Nika answered, Rania, Ali, Bana, and Ru'a. What about the rest of you? You're still thinking or what? Haya also, Abdul Majid. Okay, very good. Okay, we'll give 1 more minute and then we'll solve it together. We'll see the correct answer. Now I'll tell you guys that I can see that there is a kind of competition between A and C. So some of you said A, some of you said C. And this is a very good sign actually. Why is this a good sign? It tells you that you kind of have already solved half of the question if you're able to eliminate 2 of them, right? So when you have 4 options, for those of you who have studied before probability, what is the probability that you will get the answer correct? The same way when you flip a coin, what's the probability you will get heads or tails? 50%. Why? Because there are 2 sides to the coin. You have the head and maybe you have the tail, right? So this side is the tail, that side is the head. That's why the chances are 50-50. Now, when you have 4 options, it's like having a coin with 4 possibilities, 4 sides. So that means each side or each option, you have 25% chance of getting it correct. also, or a quarter chance of getting it correct. But when you cancel out two of them, now your chances increase by 25%. So now you're at 50% chance of getting the correct answer, because you only have to choose between this and this. And so this is one of the tactics that you will find being used a lot when students solve SAT questions. We eliminate first as much as we can, and then whatever we're left with, that will be the correct answer. Now, if we cannot eliminate 3, then we eliminate 2, and at least our chances of getting the correct answer is 50%. And if we can't even eliminate 2, but if even by eliminating 1, now you're left by eliminating 1, let's say you're not sure between A, B, C, and D, but you're sure maybe B cannot be correct. So you increase your chances still to 33% of getting the correct answer. So this idea that I explained to you is very important, because you need to keep this in mind, that when you're solving questions with SAT, it's all about the correct answer. No one is going to grade you on your notes. No one is going to grade you on whether you almost got the correct answer. No, it's either correct or it's wrong. And so you have to know how to increase your chances of getting the correct answer. And one of those ways is by understanding the idea of elimination, that the more you eliminate and the fewer options you have to choose from, the more likely you are to get the correct answer. So now let us solve this together. This is a pronoun reference question. So I used step 1. I recognize what type of question is. But you might tell me, but sir, how are we supposed to know that? You're right, you're not supposed to know that. So don't worry, I didn't expect you to apply it yet because I didn't teach it to you. But this type of question is known as a pronoun reference question. So now when I know it's a pronoun reference question, I can immediately use the approach that we use to solve pronoun reference. So here, from these ones, I know that I have to use a pronoun. Now, why do I have to use a pronoun here? Because what follows the space is what is a noun. Findings is a noun, right? Now, also, notice the previous sentence here. Watson and Crick discovered the double helix. Now, the pronoun that comes here is supposed to what? Refer to Watson and Crick, which is what? Which is third person plural. Okay, third person pronoun is not its, right? None of these two. We can immediately cancel this out. So now we're left with these two. Now, which one would be the correct answer? The correct answer is C. Why is it not A? Because A is a contraction, is a short form for they are. And if you put they are here, they are findings were based on famous X-ray DNA fibers. This forms a wrong sentence. So we cannot put they are here. But if we put there forms a possessive pronoun that does what? That refers to Watson and Crick and makes this sentence correct. So the correct answer here is C. So those of you who have answered C, good on you. You did the correct thing. All right. Now, a lot of students usually get confused between, these. We will also study this in more detail. There's a whole chapter about pronoun reference. What are the types of pronouns? You have definite pronouns, indefinite. You have reflexive pronouns, possessive pronouns. You have singular, mutable, a whole list of pronouns that we have to get into. Yes, Ru'a?
Which book do we study from?
Okay, we will.
Is it an official book or what?
So for the SAT, generally, you want to try to diversify because the type of questions they give you a list of things you have to know, right? It's not based on a syllabus that you must study. It's based on certain skills and rules that you have to know. So the book that we are going to be using are two books. We will use one book. It's Keystone for the writing, and for reading, we will use the Critical Reader book. And later you will see the book, inshallah. And I think you should all receive a PDF copy of the book once you register. So we will be using two books, one for reading, one for writing. And in addition to those books, I also have my own notes that I will share with you. I also have some practice questions that we can solve together. And the objective at the end is not to finish a syllabus. This is the difference between SAT and what you study in school. In school, okay, I have a book, I have to finish this book, this syllabus by the end of this year. But with SAT, it's about skills that you have. Okay, I know how to solve pronoun reference, so you have achieved that skill. For some students, they will find that they are benefiting a lot in these concepts from practice questions. So you will find they spend most time on that. Some students, they'll find that they use, for example, specific book. So with SAT, there's more flexibility. You understand, Ru'a?
Yes. So it's not about a book.
It's not really about the book, but we are going to rely on two of the books. Like I told you, Keystone and Critical Reader. But we will not only rely on the book. That's my point, the point I'm trying to make.
Thank you.
No problem, welcome. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you for asking. It's a good question, Ru'a. Okay, so now let's go. Yes, Zoom user. Ask your question.
My name is Sarah.
Okay,
I
Sarah. Yes,
forget to change my name.
no problem.
Teacher, how long time we will study SAT and how long time is enough to study SAT? SAT.
Okay, that's a very good question also. Now, everyone is different, so it really depends on the person. And everyone has, a different, or is starting at a different, you could say, different level of grammar, different level of maybe comprehension. So I cannot say it's the same for everyone. Some people will need slightly more time, some will need slightly less time, but the course itself is 3 months. So in 3 months, I will cover all the concepts that you need in order to study, or in order for you to be able to solve an SAT paper. Now, does that mean that after 3 months you will be ready? No, not necessarily. That's why that's where, as I told you, it depends on the person. So some students, they'll find that, okay, I know all the concepts, but I'm still not confident, in this concept. So they will spend 1 extra month practicing it, or they say they are not still very quick in solving. They understand how to solve everything, but they're not good with the timing. So they will spend extra time trying to solve it. So it really depends on the student. And what I would advise is that try to identify how much time you have. Of course, somebody who has 1 year to study is not the same like someone who has only 6 months. So someone who has 6 months, they will have to stress themselves out more, and they will have to put more effort. But someone
What about the people who have 1 month?
The people who have 1 month have to put much more effort than the people who
I've
have
got
6 months.
7 at IELTS, but I don't know if I'm ready for that.
For IELTS or for SAT? Because they're two different things.
For IELTS, yeah. I haven't taken the that
Okay,
yet.
IELTS is something else completely, right? So even the approach that you take, of course, there are some things that are common. There are common things between TOEFL, IELTS, and SAT, but with IELTS, it's a different approach altogether. And students usually, for preparing for IELTS, it can take 1 month, it can take up to 3 months, right? But the SAT is generally it takes more time because it's not just, it's not just you could say language based. You also have the mathematics part of it. You understand? So
Yes, but about
uh,
English,
with the English, look,
does it take so long?
it would, the best way is to evaluate yourself by solving papers. Can you solve the question? If you get, like, let's say you're aiming for a band of 6 or 7, you solve a paper, but you only get 5, obviously you're not ready. And they say usually it takes around 1 month to increase 1 band, right? So, but for the IELTS, we
Oh,
can talk about it another time because, like I told you, it's a different approach altogether. But for SAT, as I told you guys, it takes slightly, it can take more than 3 months, that's for sure. So 3 months, you will have the concepts, but you will need to put your own effort after 3 months, solving questions, going over the concepts again so that you don't forget them, and so on and so forth, so that you can be ready. All right, let's move on to the second question, guys. So the same way just now we solved this question and you wrote your answers in the chat, I want you guys to solve this question and put your answers in the chat, and then we'll solve it together and we'll see how we did. So you have 1 to 2 minutes. Okay, I can see that most of you answered this very quickly. And the good thing is that this is relatively easier, right? But it can still be a bit confusing for some people. The correct answer is, of course, A, right? And this is also a pronoun reference question, but it more specifically, it is a pronoun reference question that tests your ability to recognize the person, first person, second person, third person speaking. Now, obviously, we would say they here. Let me ask one of you an important question. Okay, let me ask Rania. Rania, who is they? Who is they referring to? The word they. Who is it referring to?
The customers.
Very good. Very, very good. Customers, right? Now, in some cases, it is not, in this question, it is not the case. But in some cases, you have a pronoun and it can refer to nouns that even come before that, right? Not nouns that come immediately before it, but way before it. So keep this in mind. In this question, it was easy because the pronoun is referring to a noun that comes just before it. This is what we call pronoun reference. Now, this word is called an antecedent. It's called an antecedent, or it is also called a referent. And we will talk about this in more detail, right? Always, whenever you're talking about pronoun type of questions, you should be able to identify the antecedent, and that makes it much, much, much easier to solve. If you're not able to identify the antecedent, that's where you get mistakes, okay? So with that, inshallah, we can close today's session. I think I gave you an overview of the SAT. I gave you a few advices that I believe will help you, achieve your goal. Remember, be consistent. You will need a lot of practice, and inshallah, as we go through the course, I'm sure you will be able to. You will have way more questions, and as we learn to practice the approaches for specific kinds of questions. Now, the way the course is going to be divided is that we will cover first the writing section, all right? We'll cover the writing section, and after we finish with the writing, then we'll go to the reading section, all right? Now, the reading type of questions are a little bit more challenging in terms of solving the question. But it doesn't mean that the writing questions are easier. It just means that the process that you take with the writing questions are simpler, right? The process is simpler. With reading questions, the process are slightly more developed. So that's why we're going to start with the writing. So we want to build it slowly by slowly. I want to build your abilities, so such that by the end of these 3 months, inshallah, you would have had all the necessary knowledge and skills. You might not be ready for the exam, keep that in mind, but you will have the necessary knowledge and skills for you to be able to, you could say, continue or put your own efforts and plan such that you can do well for the exam. All right, any questions? Yes, Hajar.
Teacher, in which month we can do SAT exam?
Look, like I told you, you can be ready in 3 months, but that means you have to put a lot of effort as well. You understand? Generally, students that come, I've seen students who in 3 months, they went to the exam and they got really good grades. And I've seen students who studied for 5-6 months and they went and they got very bad for the exam. Now, what was the difference between these two is the ones that, of course, did well, even though they had shorter time, but they really put the effort. That means when I gave them homework, the next class, every class that I gave homework in, the next class they had come solved it. They were solving past papers. They were doing practice questions. They were asking questions and participating in class, right? And so obviously when you have a student who's doing that, they will be able to be ready in much shorter time. And then if you give a student a lot of time, but they don't, put effort in that. So it really depends on the students. But definitely if you put the effort and you are already starting at a point where you have the English language, you don't have trouble speaking, you don't have trouble in basics, then in 3 to 4 months you can be ready, right? But if you are not consistent, and if of course your English languages don't have the foundations in the English language, then you might need more time to prepare. Tamam?
Okay, teacher, but I mean, in which months we can do this exam?
Okay, which months you can do the exam?
Yes.
So that depends on in 1 year you have, I think, about 4 sittings for the SAT. The next one, if I'm not mistaken, is in I think it's in May. I think it's in May, if I'm not mistaken. So you can aim for May, or the one after that, I think is also in October, December. So there are many exams that take place. There are about 4 exams that take place every year. 3 exams or 4 exams that take place every year. So you can pick whichever time you feel you're ready, and you do that based on that.
Okay, teacher, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, guys? Anyone?
Thank you. Have a good day.
You're welcome. Go ahead.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Yes.
Teacher,
Yes.
how many times can we try to do the exam?
As many times as you want. There is no rule that you have to do it once. So every time, like if you can do it 10 times, you can do it one time. It's up to you. Is it clear, Sarah?
Yes, thank you, teacher.
You're welcome. Yes, Haya?
What level can you take a good score in the test? Like B1, B2, like
you mean
that.
you mean
The
for
level.
SAT? For SAT or for
Yeah.
SAT is graded on a score of 1,600. So if you're asking yani from 1,600, what is a good score?
No,
Or
what's the level? I want to know what's the level.
What in terms of what? Haya? Level of language, level of what?
Oh my
Le-
God. Yeah,
Okay, wait.
level of language, yeah.
Level of language, because remember
Yeah.
SAT there's math and English, both of them are there. So
No,
you're
not
talking
for the math, for the language, English.
English. You're saying that after you finish, what level you will be in? That's what you're
No,
asking.
before the course.
Before you finish.
Yeah.
Sorry, before you start, what level
Who
you start?
can, who can start an SAT exam? What's
Of
the
course,
level?
from starting from you should have minimum B2, C1, C2.
B1, B2?
No, not B1, B2, C1 and above. So the best, of course, if you would have, you're already in the advanced stage. So when you
Okay.
do the advanced, when you do C1 and C2 exams, you should not fail it. You understand?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anyone else?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, so then we will end here, inshallah. And I'll see you guys when on Thursday, okay? So Thursday, see you the same time. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.